are discovered first and produced first, because the big ones are the cheapest and they're the easiest to find. You basically stumble over them. They're hard to miss. But once the big fields start to decline, you need to add the small fields, the complicated, the costly fields. And it is after a certain point virtually impossible to scale fast enough with the small stuff to compensate for the decline of the big. And at that point, the entire system starts to decline. Now, this is the classical structure that you have. We see a similar, pretty much same system in the United Kingdom. It's slightly different because those are mainly offshore fields. You have a different economic system. That was Margaret Thatcher, economy rules everything. So this is profit maximization in contrast to the Norways, which do resource maximization. Then we had a big disaster on one of the oil fields, so there is this dent. But in general, you have the same. The big in the beginning, the small in the back. The small cannot make up for the decline of the big, and basically the entire system collapses. You could ask if this is the real climate change in Europe. And I would say, yes, this is the real climate change in Europe. Countries like the United Kingdom that have been energy exporters into Europe and mainly into the world have become energy importers, not only for oil, but also for natural gas. And I will get into the natural gas situation a little later. So this is why politics is so interested in saving energy, because now we have to get it from someone, and getting it from someone means buying it from someone, and buying it means that the money leaves the country. So that's a redistribution of wealth that is happening. When you look at the entire world without OPEC, you get almost exactly the same picture. The biggest countries like the United States were the first, then you add the small ones, and here the blue one is Russia. And even if you include the former Russian Republic with all its states that you have now and combine that, these regions will not be able to grow the total production per day. So there will be a decline in the supply of oil. And now you have to distribute it among a growing population that wants economic prosperity. And this is a problem, because this does not work. So you should remember the structure of the problem. It's always the same. And when you look at the world, we know how much oil is in the ground, because we know how much oil the world has found. And it's like with a farmer. You cannot produce what you don't have. And when you make a rough calculation, the blue line is what we have found. The yellow line is the theory of production, how we didn't meet the theoretical maximum, but the orange shows you how the production profile will be because of the oil that we know that is in the ground. And that means that the oil that is necessary, absolutely necessary, for the growth of the world economy's production system has not even been found yet. We don't know where it is. And we want to burn it next week. Every human being with some brain between his ears knows that this is a big problem once you see these numbers. And this is another picture that you should kind of memorize in its structure, because this describes our future. It's not the future of our kids or grandkids. This is our future. We will live through the next 10 to 20, maybe 30 years. At least some of us hope to live that long. When you want to simplify it even further, you could say that after decades of 2% growth, we will reach the maximum of availability of energy in terms of oil. And then we will have a 2% decline if things go well. It might be more, but let's be optimistic, just 2%. There will be some kind of chaotic, state in between where you don't know. Sometimes it's going up, sometimes it's going down. This is where we are in, so the prices, don't send a clear signals. You're at 140, and then a couple of months later you're at 30. What is the signal that the price is sending? And if you look at economic growth. We have not yet found any society or system that has decoupled its economic growth from the consumption of energy. The main trick is that you move energy consumption to some other country and then you claim that you have decoupled yourself. But if China is producing the steel, if China is producing the plastics that we sell in Europe, then we have not decoupled ourselves from that energy consumption. We just moved it on the balance sheet of the Chinese. But it's our consumption. And when we have a current production of 84 million barrels of oil per day, nobody knows what that means. But if you do the math, 2% means 1.7. 1.7 doesn't sound like a lot. That's 2%, but if you look at the graph, you see, in order to maintain growth, once we get into the decline phase, we don't miss just 2%, but we miss 4%. You have the decline, and you want to have the growth. So it's almost twice as much as we expect. I want to give you some comparisons to get an idea about the amount of energy. Because that doesn't sound like a lot, 2%, 1.7 million barrels, doesn't sound like a lot. So what is it? And you can imagine 1.7 million barrels per day as 100 million tons of oil per year. And this is exactly the amount of oil that an economy with 80 million inhabitants like Germany is consuming every year. So if this oil is missing,